Hello, good afternoon. My name is Michelle Garland, and I am the current president of AFP Quad Cities. Thank you for coming today with an open. Sometimes, when planning the year's calendar, I think sometimes we don't get enough chances to talk amongst ourselves, literally, where we're sharing best practices or solutions, or just bringing something to the forum where we're looking for advice from our peers. So today it is more about show and tell. So there's some curated questions that we gathered from focus group and other members in AFP. And so I'm gonna throw some out there and we can talk. But first, Mary Ager is our membership chair, and she has to make sure that we are recruiting and continuing to grow, but we've got a plan for August 16th. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, well, it's just a social.
Yeah.
Next Wednesday from 4 to 6, I believe, and we'll have appetizers and one drink ticket for everyone, and just a good time to connect and socialize and get to know people better. We would prefer if you are RSVP, just so we have enough food, and the J Bar does have some really good appetizers.
Me too.
They're really good. So it's just a good time to stop in, even if you have a half an hour. We hope you guys will all come. I'll be there for the full 2 hours. Because we don't have any opportunity to socialize.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we hope you guys will all come, and if you're not a member and you want to become a member and you want to talk to me afterwards, well, I don't have a lot of time afterwards, but feel free to, just track me down and we can talk.
And then you can
Most
sign up
people here
on
are
our website, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's on the website, you can register.
AFP Quad Cities is what you'll run on Google.
Yeah, it'll pop right up.
Yep.
Okay. All right, how about we go around and introduce ourselves so we know where we're from and where we're coming from and what we're a little bit about. So we can start with you.
Sure, I'm Michaela Booth. I am the director of Road Security at Thunder Classic, and also an AFP board member.
And I'm also the membership chair. I feel like I can't take all the credit.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not letting you off the hook.
So between Mary and Michaela, at the social, if you want to talk further about membership and what that entails, either lady can help you.
I'm Karen Dahlstrom. I'm the executive director of the Moline Public Schools Foundation, and Mary roped me into officially finally joining the.
Love it.
Terry Benable, I am the vice president for Danforth Training and Quad City Press. I think you guys look familiar.
Leslie Kelly, resource development coordinator for Urban Capital.
Britt Ekstrom, development associate at Waterworks Center in in Moline.
Ann Calder, I'm the vice president of development here at Quad Cities Community.
Mary Egger, I'm the development director for Family Resources.
Alice Keeney, I'm the development manager for the families. Let's see, we'll love the development and event manager at Urban. Rebecca Luden, the development director at Access Community Quad Cities.
I'm Brian Hill, I'm the director over at the German American Heritage Center in Michigan.
Terrific. All right. Thank you all. Okay, the first question, and this is just, if you have something to contribute or something to say, just please speak openly, or I will go down the roster and call on you. All right, the first question. Does your organization have a staff giving policy? Is it successful, and how do you implement it? We don't either.
The only thing we do for staff and giving is United Way. So we encourage, but I don't think we do that well. When I worked at the Girl Scouts years ago, a lot of years ago, they wanted 100% participation. I think they got it. I mean, even if it was a very small donation, I think everyone donated, which for us at Family Resources, I've only been one that we have done. Had a lot of success there.
You know, I lied. On the intake during our first week, we are given a pledge form, so it is highly encouraged. But as a formal policy, not come across that.
But we do not have a giving policy, but we do a lot of donations. A lot of folks, like banners, some people do flyers and stuff like that, so not so much on the monetary donations. But we've done it, but we just do not have a policy in place.
You try to take it as it comes.
We do, people call me up. And, we get things figured out, so.
Just in case you're hypothetically part of an organization that doesn't have really full-time staff. Hypothetical. Do you all have the board policies that are required, they're required to give?
I don't know if it's an official policy.
Yeah, we don't have a policy specifically, but I'm really trying to figure out how to inch our way toward one, because I don't want to also squelch board recruitment that we also need, but.
We have a board job description, so before as somebody's recruited to the board, they get that, and on that, it does outlay several times. Every board member is expected, that we do expect 100% participation. At a given amount that's meaningful to them, so we don't tell them how much to give, because everybody's ability is different.
On that wording.
Yeah, that's a good way to word it.
And if you go to Board Source, they have one of the free resources is that there's a board job description through Board Source. We gave them that as backup, because so that way it's not just us saying, it's Board Source thing. Participating financially, to be honest, we're nonprofit organizations. We want your volunteer hours and your connections, but nonprofits are on philanthropy. And if board members are not giving financially, nobody else should. So you have to have 100% board participation.
And a lot of grants at that, I haven't seen the question when we were applying for AFPs, but I know a lot of grantors want to know that your board is 100% vested in your mission. And are they all, and I knew with the Putnam, the board expectation was that you had to be a Power Circle member, which meant a minimum of $1,000 per year. And that was made quite clear. And if you are recruiting correctly, and you are setting the expectation in the first initial meeting, that person by saying yes to become a board member knows that expectation. So I think it's just in how you do the first meeting and some of the time.
Yeah. I also, we ask our board members to give at the start of the year. And when we say this to them for our benefit and for your benefit, because they might serve on your board too. That board members should give early in the year, because the development officer should not be tracking down board members asking for their board gift on the end of December.
No, you're right.
You can either give your gift or make your pledge in January, so the development officers can turn their attention to recruiting new gifts and new donors. But they shouldn't be having to run after the board members. So the board chair should help you with that. Get the board chair to get behind that and say, okay, we're gonna fill out our pledge forms or whatever it is. Then you'll know this is what we're gonna do, and you can turn your attention to something else. Because they should be doing it as a matter of course. And if at the end of the year they feel so great, they want to add to it, great.
Okay.
We have to be in the top three sharing.
Yeah.
But you haven't specified an amount per se.
No, I mean, I like your language. I think I'm trying to do something similar. Just 100%, the amounts up to that, I feel like it'd be in the top three sharing.
That's what every child was required for board members a few years ago to be in the top three. Which I think is a gentle way of saying that. Yeah. Speaking of boards, how engaged is your board? If very engaged, what are your tips for success? If not so engaged, what do you think you could do better?
I mean, the Gildas, I will say, are board is more engaged than when I was at Christian Care, but I think it's because they have goals, like, that they have to serve on their event committee. So like, say, for example, like, we had multiple ordinances on event committees when I started, and I think it's more involved in going out to try to use their partnerships. Eventually.
I'd say ours is very engaged. The one thing I'll note is we have a very large board, upwards of like 35 to 40 members. So that's a lot.
Use the same words as that if I.
Yeah, so that is one of the things. And so I find with any group that size, it's harder to keep that many people engaged and honestly engaged versus like a group of 12, which is something I'm more familiar with a board of that size. So that has its own challenges.
Ooh. What keeps them engaged? Is it love of the game, love of the mission? What do you think it is?
I think it's the mission. I think it's having board members who are involved with the training before then, are on board with the mission and what we do. And also having those different committees. There are several different committees that are all broken out into so they can be more engaged and have meaningful responsibilities leading up to it.
Okay.
There's probably some perks, probably with the John Deere Classic.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and just being able to say, oh, I'm on that board, I mean, it's kind of prestigious, I would think. I think we have a little bit of that too. Yeah. Not to say that they wouldn't be involved as well, but that comes with it, yeah, for you. You guys have a maximum of how many board members you'll take? It's never gotten over, like, I think the most we've had at one time was 40. And I don't think they want to go over that. We do have some non-voting members. So that was that number, for there to have the conversations about, like, when some people have rotated off or resigned or moved out, like, not necessarily filling those positions, but kind of get it to a more manageable. What's your quorum then? Like, does your quorum increase if you have an increase? So our quorum is 19 at a meeting. Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot, but yeah. Yeah.
Do you have monthly, quarterly, or bi-monthly?
Monthly. Wow. With a few exceptions, throughout the years, maybe 1 to 2 to 3 months off. Virtual or in person? Evening too. Wow, that's a lot.
Does that do you think that's part of engagement is a monthly face-to-face meeting? It has to.
I think so, yeah. Does everyone else, how your meetings stack up to a monthly? Quarterly. Oh, really? Every third month? Every other month.
Ours are every other, so.
We do every other.
Obviously.
Okay.
We do quarterly and then our park board is monthly. Kind of all over that's what they choose to do.
Is there one more?
Well, and then I'll.
No.
All right, next question. Has your donor retention engagement engagement been affected by staff transitions? If so, what are some of the ways you have combated the negative impact?
Can I answer the last question?
You may.
So I would say that our board is really mixed in the engagement and the type of engagement, so like the type of board is different. So we have people that are very willing to roll up their sleeves, get on committees, come to stuff, volunteer. And then we have a lot of people that would just rather like advise and sit back. So I guess it's kind of like a blessing and a curse if you want more engagement, but also those people who carry a lot of institutional knowledge is really helpful.
I think the 80-20 rule seems to apply. There's always the people that do a ton of work, and they're the foundation and rock of your moving the mission forward. It seems to still be the same formula across the Off the,
So I
shattering yourself.
I started in January, our board meetings are odd months, so we've had 4. And one of them was an annual meeting, and 2 out of the other 3, I had guests coming in, so it was kind of like a rapid fire board meeting. So I thought, there's not a lot of time for chatter, so I've heard other people do, so I set up a board social going forward, hopefully like 30 minutes beforehand, and we have beer in our meetings, which is the German, it's a perk of being on the German board. So if anybody would like to join the board. We have the beer there, and I thought also like a half an hour beforehand, we would pull out some snacks and just socialize.
Sure.
I like that.
That might help the engagement or people.
Is that German beer?
It is German beer.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
I feel like put that as an advertisement. And it's out the board walls.
What, I'm actually transitioning off of board, group exhibit, so the situation with that. We, have run into a lot of issues where we had, board members move off and cause a lot of instability. So where transition for us was devastating. Much change at the very top for a short period of time.
So board transition is just as impactful as staff transition, is what I'm saying. And it seems to go in waves where there's a mass exodus and then a mass, it's hard to,
Yes.
yeah.
I think one of the important things to help, because people are gonna change positions, right? We would love it if our development officers stayed long enough to build long-term relationships. But we're gonna equal change to the desk, right? But keeping good notes, having good records. And this came up at development link last week, and every time somebody goes to visit the donor and you say, hi, I'm new at such and such, and I'd like you to tell me your story. Well, if they do that 3 times in a row, they're not gonna wanna, they eventually call and complain or say, if you don't know my story by now, if your organization doesn't tell me, then you don't belong in calling on me. But if you leave good notes on your relationships in your system, good data, that person, those persons that come to you, and what they've done with you, what are the conversations you have, what are the biographical things you need to know. She's got 2 dogs, right, and loves to vote, and really is engaged in youth soccer. Well, those are things that a new person coming in doesn't have to go ask and learn. They'll get it from the system, so then when they go have a conversation, it's should be like pretty much picking it up.
Yeah.
Where they left off. If you've done your job right, the person following you will be able to pick that up.
And reverse engineering that a little bit, I was in a position of a couple transitions happening before me, both on the board transition as well as the director transition. And a lot of that got lost. And there's a whole long backstory of why. Of course, I'm not going to tell donors all of that, but I've been extremely upfront when I am trying to reconnect with people who I knew, and I just say, hey, the reality of the situation is I don't know who my top donor, I don't have this information, but I'm doing my very best to put it all back together, like really work. And so I'm trying to just be really honest, because I don't want, and again, this is maybe me protecting myself a little bit, but it's like, I also would never want it to be perceived that I'm being lazy, right? I personally not being lazy, and so it is a little tough, and I don't even know that I'm doing, hopefully I'm doing the best job. The transitions are happening at some point within the organization to do better, but yeah, so it's one of those where we talk about just the transitions and to stabilize, it's like I found a few key people that I connected with who were previously connected with the organization, trying to really build like their trust in me and where we're going. And then to other people, I've just been real honest about that. Like,
And they can't fault you for it, they're like, I appreciate your candor, yeah, I'll help you rebuild. I mean,
yeah, and so that's been kind of, the pandemic So that all happened sort of throughout the pandemic. For our organizations, we're also able to kind of talk about that a little bit, but.
Same thing with any mistake. If
Yeah.
you're gonna make this mistake, it's so much better to be honest and tell them, we made a mistake.
Mhm.
We messed this up, and we wanna make it right, because that builds trust. So what you're doing is building trust.
Yeah,
Hopefully that answers someone answers the question.
yes.
I had a few questions that, you know, and based on my field, I have to say, we said we paid 40 people, and I kind of thought 13 was a lot for our side. So I'm just kind of curious what the size of your boards are, and then also separate question about what time of day. We talked about the
Okay.
frequency, but.
Yeah.
We're about the same size as you, about 14 minutes. That's what we have. And they meet every month and it's like. Right. We're also about the same, ours meets during lunchtime. And probably about an hour and a half, to be honest, how they're running my time.
I think we, for our foundation work is, 8 o'clock in the morning. There's 15 of them, they're normally an hour, sometimes a little bit longer. Museum Foundation is 5 to 6 with the smaller board, and they are lunchtime. The Board of Trustees for the museum is in the morning, and there's 15.
We have 16 or 17 people meeting and spots available. We meet quarterly from 4 and it goes till about 6, probably because it is quarterly. And I'm hearing all of your times, like, I know HGC would always do lunch, like, we don't provide any food and it kills me. I want to give, so I feel like it's out or like, like you're there for 2 hours, I feel like you gotta give these people something.
Mhm.
So we don't, but I'm working on that, so. Curious, do you guys provide lunch and breakfast or?
The foundation they do provide lunch, the Parks Board. Our president brings candy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's good.
And
It's got beer.
occasionally, yeah, we don't beer. Yeah, but, in our. Board of trustees occasionally, it's mornings, they drink my coffee, but occasionally hours. Nothing, they're available. Nothing. They don't expect that. It's pretty. I'm saying,
I like to
bring
have
food
something,
and.
yeah. Yeah,
I think we budgeted.
yeah,
Day before.
great,
I think it's something that we budgeted.
yeah.
Our board currently, I think is 16, I think we can have up to 18. When I started, they were meeting every other month for almost 2 hours. And we changed that to quarterly, and they meet for 1 hour, and it's from 3 to 4. What we found is you can schedule a meeting for 2 hours and it'll take 2 hours. You schedule a meeting for an hour, it takes an hour. And it's just moving, and we integrated some things into the agenda, to the consent agenda, some tools and tricks we have for moving it along. Having board members doing the reporting instead of staff, because then the board members are more engaged in what's happening instead of staff doing staff reports. The board members for our committees are doing it, and where there is support, but quarterly 1 hour, and it's been working out great.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Our board meets quarterly for 2 hours, 4 to 6 on a Tuesday. And we currently have 13 members with, I think, space for 14 or 16 actually.
We meet every other month, on the lunch hour, 7 to 1, takes about an hour and a half, depending on what's on the agenda, and we have 24.
I'm not sure I'm gonna add much to this conversation, but we met once a month and there were 9 board members.
We have 13 people, we are now going through an organizational fix up our stuff, and I'm realizing some of them are not even supposed to actually be board members, but they're running advisory roles and all sorts of stuff. So we currently have 13 people, but our bylaws say we can have 16 actual board members, so, we meet once a month, but kind of like, sounds like you guys, we take a couple months where we don't have to meet during the holidays or whatever.
Yeah, like I said, we're probably right around the 35 mark right now. We meet monthly, with some time off in the winter. We do, 5:30 to 6:30, we serve dinner. We also have beer. And then we roll right into, so the gender classic is also made up of, about 30 other like volunteer committees where we have committee chairs who like, there's a lot happening on course, right? So they have like heads for those things that are happening. They'll meet immediately following the board meeting. So board members are also invited to stay for that. So that could also be another reason why we have such good attendance and engagement is that, I mean, I've heard it said a lot of times about the gender classic, but it feels like a family reunion and that chance to like get together to see people that you're not seeing. And there is very like, it's like, you know, that gathering of friends and family kind of situation. So there's a lot of information shared out of, and a lot of times that's, like privileged confidential information. So if you don't come to those, you're not getting it. So I think that message as well.
Interesting. United Way has 23 board members, we meet bi-monthly, we do not have food at our meetings. But they are run by the board. Staff has very little interaction, as in, the board member will report and the chair will run the meeting. So I think that with that, they're run very efficiently because everyone's very aware of their people's strength. So I think the longest one might go 90 if there's a mission moment or special guests, but otherwise I think they are an hour. And they're at 4 o'clock, I believe.
Our board, assuming that's what we're.
Yes.
I apologize for meeting in Rock Island at 11. Our board is roughly like 25 to 30 members, I think. We would be happy to have fewer, but we also have a great group of people. So, we meet, I think it's feels like monthly, but it might be every for over the lunch hour, we provide lunch. And then we have different committees of our group that meet quarterly. But I have a quick question about boards. What do you guys report on? So we all have to give our reports, and I asked Linda Waston this the other day, like on Wednesday. Like, is it like just a few quick facts that you report on? Like, are there like a standard things that, does everyone here report to their board as a development person?
A written report, and then every month I provide a written report, or I should say, every board meeting. But only attend maybe a couple times a year.
Okay. How many people's, so our entire staff is present at every single board. And to me, that would seem like a unique situation, so I'm just curious what you think.
I think it is too.
And it gets very interesting because, obviously, things that are being talked about are very close, like near and dear to our hearts, we're, working on every single day, so it's hard to like put that aside and take it from an unbiased view. Yeah, but I was interested to know, like, and when we used to do staff reports, and it took up a lot of the meeting time because it was like each staff member going through and giving verbally their staff. And so we moved away from that to give more time to like strategic board discussions, and getting those like in a written form. So I just be interested to know how many other people's like whole staff or a good chunk of your staff is. Well, as you said that, I thought to myself, like, cutting our meeting down, like 2 hours, is a long time to be sitting there in a meeting, and like, if I just gave some numbers, like, they don't need me to talk, they don't, I mean, there was a discussion.
The consent agenda? Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know, that's a good tip, like, maybe I just here's some numbers. If you have any questions, let me know.
We don't have our whole staff, it's just our executive team, attends every meeting. And we used to be doing the reporting for our areas but we all have these committees that are in those areas too, so that's why we flipped it so that the head of my development committee, who's a board member, and it's board members on that committee, she does the reporting. I'm there to support and answer questions and help, you know, because she doesn't know everything about all the details, so I'm there to fill it in. And I give her bullet points. So I'm still preparing a report, but it's more of a bullet points, and we are judicious with, we're gonna focus on these two things at our board meeting next week in the development area, and so she's able to speak to those. So I make sure she's prepared, and then I'm there to help.
As a board member on another board that I won't say, they have the whole staff, not the whole staff, they have the leadership team come and present out. We get the board report beforehand, basically read from the board report, and I'm like beating my head against the table, like I could be doing anything.
Right.
So the meeting could be cut
Yes.
in half without that.
I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
So our, board of trustees is normally myself, and our executive director, and normally Julie, our administrative assistant. But it's pretty chill, like, it's a very, like, this is what's going on, I'll let you know, and then if they have any questions, I'll link in there. Julie's just there to kind of, and the notes and all that stuff. Same with our parks board, it's really just Kim and I, but we're kind of different because we have the city with us, so there's a lot of logistical questions that need to be answered, or like ideas really formal, you know. So we're kind of there to just, we let them do their thing, and then at the end, we just say, this is what's happening. I like to go home just to have my face there, and let them know, like, thank you for being here, just, anytime I reach out, they're great, and they'll do whatever I need, so just to be there to say thank you, or how are you feeling, you know, how's so doing, so. But ours are real, like, we let them kind of run it, do their thing, but we're there to normally say, that's a great idea, I'm like, that's a real life, we're not doing it, so. But just a couple of us, so. And if my executive director's gone, I just go, just to have that there, so.
I'm the only staff person at ours, with 3.5 people at the director I go, and then, so the stuff I report on is kind of like a lot of different stuff. So, we have the committees do their own, the therapy committee's supposed to report on their committee work. That engagement piece, sometimes you have to fill in blanks, or if they don't come that night, you know, you have to do it. But otherwise, it's like strat plan update, EI update, executive director report, which basically all of the staff people and what they're doing, and what we're working on, and then I think a lot of the development stuff kind of gets covered with our financial, just talk about what we're at.
Yeah, leadership goes to ours, and then if we're presenting, then we're invited by Outlook to attend the meeting, so I don't think it's one. Okay.
There's a cool thing that, so I serve on the Club City Art Board, the meeting is pretty neat, and we're actually gonna start doing it ours, which is they have a staff person present on their project, so last month I knew every exhibition that they were gonna hold for the next year, which is kind of nice, because, you know, I mean, I kind of knew it anyways, I serve on the visual arts committee, but everyone else who doesn't, that would be the only way they'd find out, you know, what they're going through, and then we had somebody come in who talked about all of the natural art projects throughout the cities and the chocolate stuff that was on. So it's just like a 10-minute snippet of a staff person to give a presentation on what they're working on. And it's really good. So, you know, we've had people say to us, like, we don't even really know what they do. You know, even though I described it, it would be great if somebody could not get any kind of presentation about what the project are.
So we would call that a mission moment perhaps, or just, yeah, so it's the why of what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah. Incorporating that. Okay, so another question is, do you have suggestions on best practice for cleaning up the database? Have you used interns or volunteers for this work?
That was my question.
Who did this, like,
I deal with databases all the time.
yes. How do you,
You have to keep it obviously cleaned up. So it depends on what you're putting in it, what data you're capturing and stuff like that, but, so let's say that you have a database and you have donors that haven't really participated in some time and stuff, you want to kind of segment that and move it off, but, if it's a mess, and there's a lot of them out there, I've seen them, your stuff is good, by the way.
Thank you.
But there's a lot of databases out there that really need cleaned up, just because it has old information, the addresses are wrong, outdated. So what I suggest is, for anybody who has a database and try to manage it, export out that data. Run it through an NCOA, national change of address, and then import it back in. I can do that for you. We run this stuff constantly. Once it's cleaned up, what happens is that data, there's an address and we can run a report on that, but that data that's exported and moved into national change address database, it will apply the new address information where that person moved to and stuff like that. If that person is no longer around, what have you, deceased, or what have you, all these things happen. As long as there was a birth certificate or a death certificate filed with the post office, it will remove that name out of the database and stuff like that.
wow,
We use a trust thing. So, yeah, there's a garbage in, garbage out. But if you're dealing with the same database that you haven't run it through an NCOA, then the odds are you're wasting your money. There's a lot of stuff that will go out and it will go to the United States Postal Service for you to try and go. It will never come back. You will never know that person doesn't exist. But you're wasting a lot of money if you don't have out. So
So you're saying we export it and then we can re-import it?
you can, I don't know what databases
Or do
you
you
guys
think-
are
okay.
using and stuff like that, but you can, as long as you keep the mapping consistent and stuff like that, your export, you can clean that database up and you can have it remapped out to enter all that new information back into the system.
Yeah, does it, can you, when you export it, you run it through this, yeah, does it show you, like, highlight the changes?
You will get what's called an NCA, this is how we do it. You'll receive a national change of database information with just those contacts that have changes in their mailing address or no longer. Let's say move forwarding, which means a couple of things. One, somebody moved and they did not notify the post office,
Right.
their new address and stuff like that. But we run a report like that and we send that database back.
Is there a charge for that?
Since you are friends, I will do this stuff for you.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
If you have Boomerang, Boomerang also partners with an organization called Triggerers that does it, but it's not 100% I found.
Yes.
But I have at least set up with Triggerers to say, you know, who have you updated? And they'll say, well, we updated 11 people. And well, who are those people? So
Yeah.
Boomerang, you can create a report to say, tell me who was changed and what was changed. And a lot of times it's like adding the last 4 digits. Although I'm finding like some people have been dead for years.
Yes.
And they move quickly for dead people, and somehow they get new addresses, and I know they've been dead since 2018. But I go through and I double check and ask them to just redo this.
Terry, what's the turnaround time for a database?
I can do within 24 hours. Wow. And it really depends on how large it is and stuff like that. Some stuff we decide a little bit on the export, but yeah, 24 hours, it doesn't take.
I think you're our new best friend. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Does anyone need volunteers to do this?
Not for database, but like, we have a lot of folders with lots of information and certain folders we take out confidential, but we do have some volunteers that have been around for a while that will always go through. Getting rid of all of our.
Yeah.
it will never be done at this rate, but. But they're there to, they're more than happy, they've been volunteering for like 50+ years, they enjoy it, you know, that's.
Yeah.
Their priority, so.
I,
Volunteer and put stuff into our database, but it's. So we have Past Perfect as our collection software, but also as a database. And we don't use it anymore, but she uses it. And so it's kind of like interesting, and we're in the district. We love her, and she's so devoted that, the fact that she doesn't want to learn boomerang, it's okay. So then we have like two databases going,
Yeah,
it's coming
that's,
out. Where,
Yeah.
all of the stuff then goes to someone else and gets put in the other one, but it's just,
it's, yes, yes. You're in a no-win situation, but she's happy.
right. And, and she's been here for like 30 years, she has all this institutional knowledge, and I was like,
Right.
oh, this boomerang, this one came back after birdie standing or something. She's like, oh yeah, there's snowbirds, they're in Arizona right now or something.
Right, that's priceless information. Yeah, you might have to, yeah,
I just need to download the database in your brain, that's what I need.
right, right.
That's why you have to look at everyone else's addresses, because I bet, yeah, the address comes back, oh, they moved to Arizona, well, they might still have their house in Rock Island. Like, you don't want to use that.
Right.
So we, not for like our individual fundraising, but all of the Bernie's budget entries, which each year comes out to like 10 to 15,000 individual entries. We actually have a really unique, volunteer partnership with the American Red Cross, which seems, it makes sense when you look at a big picture. They've been doing it for years and years and years. So we use Red Cross volunteers for all of our data entry. And then they in turn are like a working charity on our site. So John Deere Caucus makes a charitable contribution to the American Red Cross at the end of the year for their help. And we've had the same volunteers doing it for years and years. Actually, since COVID and the pandemic, we had to find a way to do it really safely, and we have what we call our Birdie's room, and it's a small area, and we just fit 3 or 4 computers back there, but we have to do that in a different way. So we actually just, it's 1 to 2 volunteers every year that does the lump sum of that work, which is really special.
I've just heard that AARP will pay volunteers to work for nonprofits.
Really?
So I'm trying to remember the name of the nonprofit that is, and she said, yeah, this is where our volunteers, that's in the computer work, and she said, and they're paid by AARP Ohio. If you Google AARP volunteer or something, you'll find it. There's some program where for certain things, AARP will pay a retiree to work on community improvement types of things. So
That's fantastic.
I haven't used it myself, but I met somebody who did. I was like, that's so good. What a great idea.
That's amazing.
Okay. For one person or small development departments, what tools and resources do you use to keep yourself organized and efficient?
I just decided to work on that. Oh, I'm all those things. I mean, I'm also part-time. It is I'm part-time, so I think for me to be most efficient when I am working is I just keep a constant list. Whenever I think of something, I just keep a constant list because then I'm able to do my highest priority stuff and the hours that I am working. I don't know, I find it really hard being a one person. I was used to working on a large team. I used to work in the admissions office at Augustana. And so it's just full of people who are willing to help. I have loved having to do it all on my own, but when it comes to organizing, a lot of times it is like, what needs to be done right now? And that's sort of right where it's most focused.
It's hard to sign to having that person to like, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Always, but you can always ask any one of us,
Yeah, right,
Seriously.
right, yes.
like,
Yeah.
hey, can you look at this, or I don't know, because that is harder, just even hearing somebody else say, yeah, that looks good.
Yeah.
That sounds good, that's a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. I try to get better at using my board too in some of that, like when it comes to, you know, your first learning, I kind of was wanting to do everything that I could, like all the time, because you want to know all the things, and then now sort of it's like, okay, well, now I've been here for 2 years, so now there are things that will help my time be most efficient
Right.
if I'm utilizing all of these other resources as well, so.
I write down in a planner, right, and then I have a calendar, then I have my Outlook, then I have my notebook, but I don't think that's very very efficient. So I just need to, but I'm getting better at writing down in the planner on that day, these are the things I have to do. So that happens,
Yeah.
but I need the month to see what's going on in the scheme of things. And Outlook to tell me what's coming up next, but I write everything down in case the technology world blows up, I still have everything. I might over calendar, but I think I need to.
I started time blocking, which is kind of like over calendaring.
That's what, I need to do more of that, I need to remember to do that.
Focus your time on one thing, right? Is that how?
Yeah, so you know, you can block out a length of time, so that way, it's like, if I know that I need to work on development for this amount of time, marketing or operations, or whatever, it's like I can block out that half hour.
Right.
And that way you're not checking your inbox all day, because I think email kind of is supposed to be efficient, and I think it's still is all.
That becomes the job is emails.
Agreed.
Do you set like focus times that you're not seeing those emails come through, is that what you're saying? Like,
I don't-
Outlook?
Well, I don't have notifications come up,
Mhm.
so but I have all tabs on my browser, I probably should, but I just would not look at it. So I check my email at 8:32. I mean, I just started doing it, but I
Yeah.
can't say it's like had much success, but it's just, I thought if I communicate that out, that, you know, don't expect emails from me, you know, I guess some people that want like an instant messenger.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the expectation around email has kind of changed. It was never intended to be like an immediate, you know,
It's not future, it's neat, yeah.
I'll get calls sometimes and then I emailed you never coming.
Yeah.
There are two options. How important it is how been able to talk about this. And they even talk about structuring your emails so that you
Right.
get the response you want. So like you say you go to have a meeting with somebody, you're kind of taking the time to place, making a suggestion. So that way if it doesn't work, they can say it doesn't work and maybe come up with another suggestion, but you're not going back and forth all day.
Yeah.
Oh, but when are you available next week? Oh, okay, well, where should we go? And then it's just like this.
Yeah. Well, I attended Robin Sharma. I think he wrote The Monk Who Stole His Ferrari. And Robin Sharma basically said, check your email 3 times a day. And I know that's the right way to do it, but the minute something comes up, I am off, just, you know, we're just reacting to, but that, yeah, set the expectation. If it's really important, they'll stand by your desk or they'll, yeah.
Also, the quicker you get back to email, the quicker people expect you to get back to email, so it's like you created your own problem.
Yeah, I have.
And that was the expectation with our previous executive director, and our new executive director is not of that mindset. But she didn't really know that that was the expectation, so we're all sending emails fast and furiously and then not getting responses like we'd all been used to. And so I think she was finally learning that she came from a very different space. And then saying, you know, if you need me immediately, you know, call or do the chat in Gmail. Otherwise, the email is just not, because, but at the same time, it's like, you know, here's a draft of something, I need some feedback on it, so you email it, and then it's like needing to say, I need feedback on this by blank. I think to be as explicit as possible when you need it back, otherwise. But when you come from a culture where it is immediate, and that's all you've known, and someone coming into it doesn't know that, it's really hard for both parties to manage their expectations.
Right, we started our 32-hour work week, so we are not supposed to send non-urgent emails before noon on Mondays or after noon on Fridays. Before noon on Monday. Before noon on Mondays or after noon on Fridays. Non-urgent. Which is hard, because then you have to delay, because sometimes I'll just be working and I'm like, oh shoot, you know, I sent it, but, you know, I'm supposed to delay the send. So that, because there's some people who maybe aren't working, or I don't know. To me, I feel like it gets on the other person, like, all right, if you're not working, then just ignore it. But, because it's hard for me to remember, yeah, but, it's just trying to change the culture to, you know, shift to that non-emergent stuff. We say, I don't, it came from somebody else, it's not my original thing, but hearts and coolers. Like, everything is not a heart and cooler situation.
Oh, what's
Yes.
that?
Like the heart.
Was that?
Oh.
Yeah, she gave us stuff.
Oh, water cooler and a hot.
Yeah, I'm thinking like such emotion. But it does feel like that in our work, doesn't it? I feel like everything is like, oh my gosh, I need it now.
Right.
Where are you at with this? What's going on
I
with
think
this?
I have a different perspective on that because I work in the hospital setting and I hear stroke alert and cardiac alert, you know, code blue. I'm like, I am not a surgeon saving a life.
Yeah.
Everything here can wait.
Right, right. I think, the sense of urgency with my new position at United Way it's not as knee-jerk or as urgent because just the way people are working at a little more, they're working more intently, that they don't want the expectation on them, so they're not putting it on
Right.
me, so that's been a real eye opener. It's like not everything's on fire, not everything is. And it's like, wow, I don't have to answer that right away. I'm learning, just trying to work with the pace change. So.
Well, not only is it good for your boundaries, I feel like I'm being a little bit better. I don't think I'm 100% there yet, because I'll get an email. Even from a donor on the weekend, and they're just saying it, it's the most convenient time to them, but I see it, I'm like, I need them to know that they are important, I need to get back to them right now, and it's so hard to turn that off, but it's also, it's about your boundaries, but as well as like, if I, just, my most immediate answer might not be my best answer, so like, let me sit and think, have some time to digest that, and I can get back to you. And when I've really been able to sit and think it out and give you a well thought out answer about it. So try to frame it that way in my mind, like I'm not just taking a break, I'm really trying to give it my all, my best attention.
Good advice.
Yeah.
The same goes with the emails going out, sometimes this is so important, and I need you to get this out, but maybe if you let it sit for a night, you come back and you're like, oh, yeah.
I have multiple teachers at schools, like,
No,
yeah, okay.
I just got to the German American Heritage Museum board meeting, so I'm kind of waiting.
I think this is good for my recruitment, so go tell
It is.
people. Yeah. If you guys are interested in serving on a board, let me know.
Yeah, I had a meeting the other day with the gal, I was like, I know I've sent you a barrage of emails, so I just wanna, talk things through, and I felt like saying, but I didn't, it was like, this wasn't a barrage at all. In my world, but I'm glad you didn't hear it, well, that's so slow, so I need to slow my roll, but yeah, so that was lovely. Okay, great advice, everyone, yay. What are some top strategies or best practices to use when putting together a development fundraising plan? What recommended resources for templates is kind of going on Friday's development link, but do you research templates online as to what to use, or are you using what was done before? Or creating one from scratch? What are you doing?
We don't have a development plan, and my position is only even a year and a half old, as development associate, so trying to create one, and so I did find some templates, I found them through Boomerang since that's our database, and it was vastly different from what I was thinking. I was thinking my plan would be, here are the things that need to be accomplished and the tasks and who would be doing which, and the one from Boomerang was an Excel of just January, February, March, what needs to be done each month. And So and then I was like, well, maybe that's the norm, but that's not how I was envisioning it, but my brain might not work the way many other brains work.
That sounds all accounting like,
Yeah.
where it's, yeah.
I kind of like that though, if you have it broken down by month, like this is what you need to focus on this month, like.
Which I like that for the task, but it didn't really necessarily have a kind of like, Bob is responsible for X, Y, and Z, and Jane is responsible for A, B, and C. It was, so I want to try to mesh the ideas that I had together with the template that I had and kind of create something new. But there's some freedom in creating something, but it's also kind of like, what am I leaving out?
Right.
But also, what do we have the freedom to do new and differently and better, because we don't have anything to compare it to.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
I think the calendar is different than the plan. I think the plan has to lay out what are the goals for the year and how are you, and, what are the components that are gonna get there. And on the calendar, that's where you slot in the pieces to get to the goals, you know what I mean? I think they are two separate things that work together. We have that, we have a plan and then we have a calendar, we call it the full Monty. Or
I love that.
Monty, for short, because everything goes on it.
Mhm.
But we just refer to Monty, to make sure we're not missing anything, and sometimes we're like, yeah, we're not gonna do that, and we'll take it off. But then we can keep it year over year too, so then we see what we did last year and last year's Monty. But then it still relates to.
Great.
Does everybody here incorporate their like fundraising or development goals into their budget? Like, is that part of your budget? I just asked this question because I came from the Y, and at the Y, it was a part of the budget, and you were expected to meet that, otherwise.
Yes.
You're looking for another job, but at HGC, that's not the case. We don't have a budget, that we have to meet with fundraising, which is kind of unique and honestly takes a lot of stress off of your development people.
Wow.
It's really nice. It's everything we fundraise is just on top of that. I guess the answer I got was it used to be like a really conservative board. And so they really focused on budgeting for what needed to be budgeted for, and then everything that was fundraised after that, right. So we're able to do a lot of these projects. I'm thankful that that's how they thought back at that time. So I was just curious if that was what the split was there, because I came from a place where it was in your budget to a place where it's not in your budget.
My donor network is in the budget overall. But I was going into the minute of how I was gonna do this, how I was gonna do that. Basically, it was like, we don't care how you get there. We just,
Yeah.
you don't need to give us all this stuff. I was like. And it helps me, but it's kind of like, oh, there's some freedom here. Okay.
And part of it being in the budget that, and I understand we have to have it in there, but there's part of me that there's only so much we can control when we're fundraising. We can control our actions and we can control what we do, but we can't control the donor's decision is going to be, whether they give, they don't give, how much they give. So budgeting is always going to be an estimation.
Welcome to my life as an admission officer, not contributions being based on something.
Yeah.
I'm not on it, sorry. I was tricks back. I know, I was back, but it's exactly right, where you're trying to figure out, based on past history, what can you realistically say, yes, we can count on this. But then if you have a banner year where you really press that, then the expectation becomes, well, then that can happen every time and probably will. So it just, ratchets more, which I think.
And it's really nice too, because we're able to do these projects to show people like in the moment what their money is going to, which I think leaves a huge impact on people who are donating.
Fundraiser for operating them, like,
For the operating expenses.
yeah,
So where does that,
sounds great.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I started, after, like, I got this answer, I started writing down like a bunch of other questions. Because, like I said, coming from the Y where everything, like, to operate, like, you had to fundraise too, other than the memberships that were coming in and the programs that you were running. So I am trying to like kind of fill that gap between coming from there and here and figuring out how it all works, because I like operations and I like figuring out how things work and knowing how things work, so, yeah, I have a list of questions going about that as well, so.
We're very similar to that, obviously, museums of the city, so operationally. Because I need to really just do all the fun stuff, so right now, we're Spanish classes are super full, I'm gonna try to find grants to hopefully bring numbers and teach Spanish, like, I kind of just do it need basis, but obviously, like, I have my own personal goal that I want to bring, but right now, we kind of do like our project-based things, like, the $1 million project right now we're gonna do, and I can raise money for that, you know,
Yeah, that's a
so
goal.
I am very blessed in that aspect, that I don't have to worry about operational things, but if things come up, I'm the first one that's like, we'll get a grant, we'll figure it out, you know, because we aren't gonna get it, we get what we get, and that's kind of anything extra that we want to upgrade or anything like that, that's on me, so my budget a little all over the place with that, but I just have to make sure I'm doing my best. I normally try to get as much money as possible, but we're kind of in the same. It's so, I always feel bad because like when you do have to do operational, you don't get focused. I get focused on all of that. So it's not very fun.
People like to give to projects.
Yeah.
They do, they don't like to get operations, so.
So it is
Yeah.
kind of it's a tough thing. So
What is your-
I know I'm like, you know, like
It's still just take work
yeah.
tasks to get
I
to
don't
that
have to
goal.
worry about making sure Susie gets paid, you know, like,
Well,
like that's huge, like, I mean, that's.
Right.
That's something where I'm like, I'll help you raise for it, because I just can't imagine that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very nice.
But I don't think anyone's gonna get fired if you don't. I mean, I always say this to my people, like, you can put my goal, whatever, but just don't fire me. I mean, if I'm working hard towards that goal, I don't think anyone in development is gonna get fired unless you just aren't doing your job, but if you're working hard, you're not gonna lose your job, that's it. Thing. You're looking like it, good.
No, if you're not, if you're not funding for your mission, then you're in the wrong position.
Right.
All right, well, it is 1 o'clock. Thank you for your input. Thank you for coming today and sharing. Thank you. I think we all have something to say.